Hey guys, welcome back to the vlog. Well, I lived a very extraordinary life packed with a lot of stories, and I always wanted to tell my stories in chronological order. And right now I'm stuck on this Roy DeMeo thing and this Joey Molino, which I don't think I'm going to do any more videos on him unless he does something stupid. Then I'll report that to our viewers. Today we're going to be talking about Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman. Now, I'm going to tell you how I wound up involved in that case. If you guys go back 3 years, you'll see I started my video off with the Brian Malise case, which was a triple murder case that happened in Salem, New Jersey in March of 1979, where 2 women were slaughtered and a 5-year-old little boy murdered by way of decapitation. Bad case. So when working that case, I worked it with the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office. The first assistant prosecutor was a guy by the name of Dennis Callow. And Dennis had a team of detectives, prosecutors, detectives that were Bergen County cops, detectives that were assigned to his office. And I met those guys. And the lead detective on that particular case was a guy by the name of Frank Del Preti. And Frank and I became pretty good friends over the 3 years or 4 years that case dragged on. So I became, even though I worked that case for zero money, I got no money at all for it. I did it because, of course, this little boy named Harold was butchered. All these people were butchered. And why were they murdered? For money, because this Brian Malise insured them all. But I don't want to get into that story. That's why I already did a video on them. You can go check it out. The Brian Malise, Alice Malise, Marsha Frering, and her 5-year-old son. But it bums me out just thinking, because I saw all the homicide photographs. I saw the crime scene. So anyway, I became very good friends with them. And back in 1985, 86, when the Malise case was already done, I think it ended in 83 or 84, these prosecutors in the New Jersey State Police were working on this guy, the Iceman, and everybody knows who he is, except me. I didn't know who he was at that time. This is prior to him this is like 2 months prior to Richard getting popped, okay? So as I said before, I made friends with all the members of that squad at the prosecutor's office in Hackensack, Bergen County Prosecutor's Office. And so I stopped by the office to say hello one day, and Frank Del Preti and the other detective that was head of that squad that went to the ATF, I think he was the guy that was responsible for going undercover and popping him. I forget his name. They asked me, do I know this guy? Because he didn't live far from me at this time I was living in New Jersey. He didn't live too far from me. And of course, they knew I had all kinds of connections, criminal connections, mafia connections, drug cartel connections in New York. And some of these murders that happened were in New York, that Kuklinski did. So they asked me about him, and I said, no, but I'll find out. Now, let's talk about criminals in a city that has 8 million people. Well, you would be shocked if I told you that it's probably 2% of 8 million, maybe 1% of the same people doing the same crimes over and over and over. So the criminal community, even in New York City, is pretty tight knit. I mean, if I don't know somebody, who did the crime. I know somebody that knows somebody that did. Okay. And that was, and they knew that about me. They knew. So Frank and this other detective whose names escaped me, he was an Italian guy. You guys probably know who I'm talking about. Set me down and they says, listen, we know about this guy. He's a bad guy. He's suspected of doing a bunch of homicides. What do you know about him? What can you find out about him? I said, I don't know nothing about him. I never heard about this guy. And he was a really big guy. And I said, I don't know, but I'll find out. So I worked the case for 2 months, free, because these were just my friends. And I didn't even, I got no compensation whatsoever for doing this. So I worked the case and I started. How do you go around? How do you go around asking about somebody without setting all kinds of alerts off in criminals' brains? Hey, why are you asking about this guy? So what I did instead was I said, hey, have you ever heard of this guy Kuklinski? I heard he's dropping dimes on people left and right. He's ratting everybody out. So I mean, and he's supposed to be, he ratted out two people that I know, and both in New Jersey and in Brooklyn and in Queens. So I mean, and I started dropping that wire around that he was a rat. And that went through the criminal community like a hot knife through butter. Boom. And right away, I was getting calls. I never heard about this guy. I never heard this. I never. And then I was talking to some pretty big names, in crime, some pretty big names. Nobody heard of this guy. And then they were saying, what they were doing, because I got their attention when I said that this guy's going around ratting people out for murders and all kinds of shit. It gets people's attention and they want to know, especially organized crime guys. They want to know. And so I knew I was making headway when I got 4 or 5 calls asking me to describe this guy. And the description that I got was the guy's like 6'7", 300 pounds, big guy. And they went, nah, we don't know anybody. So his description is what convinced me 100% that he never did no contract killing for the mob. First of all, the mob doesn't pay people to kill people when they want them dead. There's 100 wannabe goombas that are in line that'll take that job free of charge just to make their bones. So there is no such thing. So anyway, everyone said, no way, no way will we get involved with some, I think he's Polish or some shit. There's just no way. And how would this guy be able to blend in and be able to get next to, even if they did pay him to kill somebody, which they didn't and which they don't do, go to all these mob channels and they'll tell you the same thing. How could this guy get next to nobody? I mean, anybody would see a guy, you're coming out your house, you walk into your car, and you see this 6'7", 350-pound friggin' house get out of the car. He ain't sneaking up on nobody either. You know what I mean? So anyway, after about 6 or 7 people calling me, and they were truly interested in it because they were asking me for a description. How did I know? They're asking me all of these questions that I didn't want to answer, with the exception of what did he look like. And I all got, hell no, nobody would get involved with this. I even went to the Colombians because I was big I was working with the DEA at the time too. So, I mean, nobody. Richard Kuklinski, it was, because he's dead now, full of shit. He never did a contract murder for no organized crimes people in New York. Nobody in New York even heard of him. And as I said before, just describing this guy, they couldn't mistake him for anybody else. So he's a fraud. His book was a fraud. And I want to thank you, Mohammed. Mohammed, one of our viewers, asked me about this. And I think he asked a couple of times. And a lot of you guys, you wanted to know. So right now, the channel is in the 70s. This happened mid-80s, 87, 86, 87, somewhere in there. So anyway, I wanted to put that to bed, that he was a fraud. everything, the interviews that he did, the book that he wrote was all full of shit. On that note, I'm gonna close and put the Richard Kuklinski case to bed. I'll see you guys on the next one.